Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Prince Edward Island Electoral Boundaries Commission. My name is Gerard Mitchell. I'm the chair of the commission, and I have with me the other members of the commission. On my immediate right is Lynn Murray. On my far right is Libby Shaw. On my immediate left is Kerry Carpenter, and on my far left is Elmer MacDonald. I'm going to make a few brief remarks, then invite you to come forward and to make your presentations or ask questions about our work. As you know, the Commission is presently engaged in the process of drawing an 18-district electoral map of Prince Edward Island. I hasten to add that the 18-district map we are drawing now will not be the electoral map for the next provincial election. The map for that will be the 27-district map the Commission drew last year, and that was adopted by the legislature in May of 2017. The task of drawing an 18-district map has its origins in the decision of the government to hold a referendum on electoral reform in conjunction with the next provincial general election. On December the 20th, 2017, the Premier sent me a letter which was tabled in the House of Assembly on the same day, in which he said in part, and I quote, "In the speech from the throne, the government committed to the creation of an independent map that lays out the 18 geographic boundaries inherent in the mixed-member proportional model put forward in the 2016 plebiscite. To that end, we would formally request that the Electoral Boundaries Commission undertake this advisory work. This will ensure a level of public participation and education essential on a matter of such fundamental importance in our democratic process." In short, then, the Commission is to produce an 18-district electoral map of the province to be used as an educational tool during the upcoming referendum process. The mixed-member proportional model put forward in the 2016 contemplates a 27-member legislature composed of 18 district members and 9 members at large. This commission's job is to come up with a map dividing the island into the 18 electoral districts so that people will be able to see what that would probably look like. In drawing the 18-district map, the Commission will be following the same principles and procedure it did in creating the 27-district map. In other words, we're drawing the 18-district map as if it were the official electoral map for the next election. That, we feel, is the best way to ensure that we get a good educational tool for the referendum. The purpose of this meeting is for the Commission to receive public input about where the various boundaries should or should not be located on that 18-district map. To stimulate the discussion, the Commission has prepared and brought here 2 sample maps, which I was going to say were on the wall. It must be on the wall some up back. The Commission, I must say, is not committed to either one of those maps. It's a device to stimulate discussion. It may well be that at the end of the process, neither of those sample maps will be the one the Commission finally settles upon. Last year, when we drew the 27-district map, we took 2 sample maps to all of our meetings, and in the end, neither of those sample maps made the cut. It was a different one that we presented to the legislature. When it draws an electoral map, the Commission is constrained in what it can do by Section 3 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which provides that every citizen has the right to vote. Another constraint on the Commission's authority is contained in Section 17.2 of the Electoral Boundaries Act, which provides that no constituency or district can be more than 25% above or below the provincial average. Now, I have to say that 25% in 17.2 also is subject to charter scrutiny, in that the overriding thing is that the Commission has to be able to consider what is necessary for effective representation. The leading authority on the right to vote in the context of fixing electoral boundaries is the Supreme Court of Canada decision in the Carter case out of Saskatchewan in 1991. In that case, the Supreme Court of Canada held that the right to vote in Section 3 of the Charter includes the right of every citizen to have effective representation in the Legislative Assembly of the province. The Supreme Court of Canada goes on to say that the first condition for effective representation is relative parity of voting power. That is to say, one person's vote should not be diluted compared to that of another. And although parity is the primary condition for effective representation, it is not the only factor worthy of consideration. Drawing electoral boundaries is not just a mathematical exercise. Section 3 of the Charter mandates effective representation, not equality of voting power. The Supreme Court of Canada also recognizes in the Carter case that although a citizen's vote should not be unduly diluted, effective representation often cannot be achieved without taking into account countervailing factors such as geography, regional issues, community interests, community history, municipal boundaries, minority representation, and population trends. These factors can sometimes justify some deviation from equality of voting power. In Prince Edward Island, electoral districts are based on the number of registered voters. And according to the records of Elections PEI, this province has approximately 100,000 registered voters. Based on 18 parity districts, that would mean a provincial average of about 5,550 voters per district. The reason that we are here is to get your help in identifying any countervailing factors that would have such a bearing on effective representation in this area as to justify some deviation from the 5,500 number. We have with us this evening, in addition to the members of the Commission, two others that I want to identify. One is Mr. Paul Allen up here at the top of the stairs. He's with Elections PEI as their Manager of Operations and Communications, and he will help you with the map and with materials. And the other person we have with us is Mr. Terry Scott, who is our mapping technician, and he can move the boundaries around at your suggestion to see what they might look, if you want to vary them from what we have on the maps. But the first little thing I want to put up before I go there is, and invite you to come forward, is I'll ask Terry to put up a little cartoon that was in today's Journal Pioneer. Yes, that's it. Now this is done by a well-known and talented island cartoonist. And the message I want to take from it is probably not the message that he intended, because he's got a message that says there are 27 districts made up of 9 Greens, 9 Liberals, and 9 Conservatives. But from our point of view as a commission, the thing that's of interest to us is that if you count up all his districts, he's only got 26. And he's only got 9 Greens. If your Hannah Bell is here, she might be disappointed by that. But the point from our commission is that we got to be careful about what we're doing, because at the end of the day, things have to add up right. So I hope you will be able to point things out to us so that we get things right when we draw this map. Now, without further ado, I'm going to invite you to come forward take the mics and ask any questions or make any submissions or presentations you might want. Please don't forget to give your name at the beginning, because these proceedings are being recorded. Okay?
Any takers? I've got the mic here, and I'll come right to you with the microphone. You can one over there as well? Okay, great.
Check. Check, check.
I'm MacArthur, Charlottetown.
Yes, sir.
Just looking at your 2 maps here, or 2 pages. The main issue here is District 16. Is that what basically different geography?
Yes, 16 is the district that stands out on both maps as being considerably smaller than the others. In map number 1, I think it's 23% smaller
Right.
than parity, and on the other one it's approximately 35 or 36 under parity. And the reason is that is the Acadian district of the province, and traditionally that has been a smaller district, having special status due to the minority status of the Acadian community, and it recognizes their history and tradition. And also another point about that is the representative from that district is traditionally looked upon as a representative for Acadians wherever they might live in the province. As you know, District 16 is not the only place where Acadians live. There's Tignish, Summerside, Rustico, and all the way to Surrey. In the 27 district map that was drawn last year, it's also smaller. I think in that map it's around 20% of the provincial average. So, yes.
Just as a follow-up, so do we know what percentage of the population in that area under both these map scenarios would be Francophone or Acadian?
I'm not sure of that.
I guess
We made inquiries to try to find that, but we haven't been successful.
it would seem like that would be the
Yes,
main
that would be
quality or thing we'd want to look at in terms of
well,
whether
the last
might suggest that
the last time around, I noticed afterwards one of the criticisms of the maps was from the Acadian community that it was too large.
Okay, thank you.
So we may hear more on that when we travel west. Cool.
Any other comments? Questions?
Yes, thank you. Leo Broderick, just two questions
Sure.
or comments. Have you given consideration in organizing this map that there should be a special designation for Indigenous people of the province?
No.
That's my first question.
Yeah, okay.
And the second is more than a question, it's a comment. This may be an important exercise to go across the province to present alternative maps, but the big question is this. In terms of promoting proportional representation in the province, are you prepared to recommend that there should be considerable funding for a public education, not just on the kind of map that we should have, but that this is, in fact, the way to go in this province, that we need proportional representation, and we do need public dollars to fund a campaign? Two questions.
Okay, the first question is, no, we did not consider a separate district for Aboriginal persons. We had no interest shown in that during the last hearings, and neither have we and with respect to this. The other thing I would say about that is that in Nova Scotia, at one point there was a proposal from the government there to have a non-contiguous district assigned for Aboriginal communities, which would take a number of reserves and put them together and make up one district, and that was rejected by the Aboriginal community. So I don't know that the Aboriginal community in Prince Edward Island would have much interest either in such a model. With respect to your second question, well, that's beyond our certificate. Our job is simply to draw this map with respect to 18 districts for the province. I would hope that there would be adequate funding to support a good campaign during the referendum, but I'm just like the rest of you here. This commission has no power with respect to that, and will not be making any recommendations one way or another. It's not within our mandate.
My name is Emmett Doyle. Parity and communities of interest is important, as from the derivatives in the paper the other day. And in that parity of representation, keeping things all equal for everyone and that type of thing, and recognizing the community of interest. Therefore, I propose that there to be 17 districts in PEI. I don't know how you'd work it out otherwise, or add one extra, and then have 2 people elected from each area, one from Queens County, one from Prince County, dual members elected from Queens County, Prince County, Kings County, dual people elected out of Charlottetown District, and
Yes,
2 people elected out of Summerside District.
Yes, Mr. Doyle, but the problem is our mandate has nothing to do with any of that. Our mandate is just to draw an 18 district map. That's our assignment.
Yeah, I don't know how you would divide the people otherwise in that, except by some other means, that type of thing. So therefore, under the charter that you're talking about, Section 3 of the charter, where they ask for effective representation. So that would mean then that there'd be power of recall and also represent the female population. So under a dual election in the area, you'd have a male
but
and
Mr.
a female.
Doyle, Mr. Doyle, we have a lot of people here, and we want them to stick to the subject, which is the 18 district map. And we want to help with those boundaries. Beyond that, we can't go. We can't talk about another system because we don't have any authority with respect to that. And we'll not get our job done if we talk about another model.
But how would you test those people at the ballot box?
Which people?
The additional people that are elected by proportional representation. How can they be tested at the ballot box if they're elected by the popular vote?
Yeah, I understand you're talking about the 9, but
Yes,
I'll bring
the
you
9
back.
people.
I bring you back, Mr. Doyle. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the 18. Our mandate is a very narrow one. Come up with a map of 18 districts. That's all we're here about tonight.
I think you've done a good
Those
job
other
that way.
the subjects that you're talking about, I hope they get to be debated, but this isn't the forum.
Yeah, I think you've done an excellent job in the way you presented the 18 districts. That's fine.
Do you like one map better than another?
I don't really see that one is really any different than the other. There's a difference in them, all right, but they're both effective.
You'd be satisfied with either?
Yeah, I'd be satisfied with either.
Thank you. Yes, man down here.
Derek Smith, Stratford. I was a bit late coming in here. You might have covered this point off. When you did your districts, did you think about the industries in the district or just the population numbers? Like, did you consider farming, fishing as a district, or do you just say, okay, this is where the people are at, this is how we're going to organize it?
Well, it's the districts are based on the number of registered voters. However, we do try to take to account what's going on in districts, and we try to keep the rural ones rural and the municipal ones municipal. We try to keep communities of interest together as best we can, but that's difficult when the districts get bigger.
Thank you, Your Honor. David Dunphy, Town of Stratford. And my comments here tonight will be strictly from a Town of Stratford perspective. First of all, I want to thank you for your deliberations last year. Almost about a year ago to this day, you were in Stratford, and we had a great discussion at that time. And I want to commend you on the map that you did then. I think it was a fair map, and a lot of the concerns that we had at that time were addressed and considered. So, of course, we're talking about a map here, and I have online there. This is I'll go through a presentation here first, and I appreciate the difficulty that you have before you, because even when we talk about community of interests, it's very difficult to nail it down that closely, because the districts are quite large compared to current districts. So I have a presentation. I'm just going to walk through it here, and then you can ask questions. It's not very long. Dear Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to provide input into your deliberations on the mixed member proportional representation map that you have been asked to develop with 18 electoral districts for Prince Edward Island. We appreciate the difficulty of preparing a map such as this mixed member proportional representation map, as the districts will be 50% larger than the current electoral maps on PEI. On behalf of Council and the residents of Stratford, I would also like to acknowledge the fair consideration that you gave to the information we presented last year when you drew up the new electoral map for PEI. There are approximately 100,000 voters on PEI, given that there were 99,837 in the last 2015 provincial election. So if we divide this, I know you've been through this a little bit, but I'll just bear with me. If we divide the total number of electors by 18 electoral districts, the average number of electors per district would be 5,555, as you indicated. In the 2015 provincial election, District 6, Stratford-Kinloch was the largest district on PI with 5,317 electors, or 44% larger than the average district size of 3698 in 2015. This large variance was due to the higher than average population growth experienced by Stratford over the last number of years. The PEI Electoral Boundaries Commission made a very prudent decision when they created the new provincial electoral district map in 2017. Stratford was split in a manner that created two districts, one that was completely within Stratford, District 6, Stratford-Keppoch, with 3,593 electors, while the second one, District 5, Mermaid, Stratford, 3,597 electors, appears to have approximately 75% of electors within the town of Stratford. Therefore, there are approximately 6,300 electors within the town of Stratford. Given that the average number of electors in the 18 district map is 5,555, the entire town of Stratford as one of the 18 districts would mean, the entire town of Stratford as one of the 18 districts would mean that the district would be 13% above average district size. Thus, under a mixed member proportional representation map, Stratford voters would reside in two different districts. We would much prefer that the two districts within Stratford have an even distribution of our residents rather than one district having most of the town and one district with a small portion of town residents. Two of the benefits of dividing Stratford somewhat equally in a mixed member proportional map are: the future growth is spread between two districts. If one mixed member proportional district is 100% within Stratford, our strong population growth will create a much larger than average district by the time that the third provincial election occurs under this new map. Similar to what happened in 2015, District 6 was completely within Stratford, and after three elections, it was 44% of the average, 144% of the average district. The two districts would also be geographically similar in size rather than having one smaller and one larger district. We have a strong community of interest with the areas to the east and north of the town, and suggest that one district contain approximately half of Stratford's electors and residents in the communities of interest to the north, and that one district contain the remaining half of Stratford's electors and residents in the communities of interest to the east. The voters in these areas share a fire district, a school zone, churches, sport associations such as the Pondle Minor Hockey and Stratford Soccer, Baseball, and Basketball, sports and other facilities, and service clubs such as the Lions Club. Many residents to the north and east of Stratford also shop in our town, use town facilities, and register in town programs, as you can see from the adjacent program registration table. So this registration table, as you saw last year, just summarizes the residents of people that participate in town programs. It goes through Stratford, of course, Charlottetown, Mermaid. We're not asking Charlottetown to be part of the district, but Albury Plains, Pond, Mount Herbert, Fort Augustus, Johnson's River, Hazelbrook, Vernon River, Mount Albion, Alexandra, all the way down to Vernon River. The Electoral Boundaries Act sets the variance at plus or minus 25%, which means that the legislation allows a given district to have up to 50% more electors than another district when the boundaries are redrawn. This tolerance for variation is arguably excessive because it allows a considerable distortion of representation by population. Credit to the Commission, of course. You haven't taken a large variation there, but that's to your credit. This can become even more distorted, though, in a fast-growing community like Stratford, where the variance from the average will likely grow faster than in other districts. As we indicated in our submission last year, Stratford grew by more than any other municipality of size in the Maritime provinces on a per capita basis during the last census period, and more than 37% over the last two census periods over a 10-year period. We have every reason to believe that the strong growth will continue, as evidenced by the fact that permits for 130 new dwelling units were approved by the town in 2017, which is more than the 117 permits for dwelling units that were approved by the town during the previous 2 years combined. The average number of building permits issued over the last 8 years has averaged about 115 residential units per year. Now, last year, Your Honor, you did ask for a projection of our growth, and I have a map up here. The previous map shows the areas within the town where we expect, and it's in your package there as well. It demonstrates where we expect our growth to occur, the different areas, and these are all approved subdivisions or near approved building projects. To demonstrate the areas in Stratford where we expect growth to occur over the next 10 years, we have prepared a map attached as Schedule A, indicating the number of residential units we expect to be constructed in specific areas of the town. Based on the currently approved subdivisions, current units under construction, plus residential units we expect to approve shortly, we expect to see approximately 929 residential units at a minimum constructed over the next 10 years. This 929 units would translate to approximately 2,360 residents based on 2.5 residents per household in the 2016 census. And that would translate into approximately 1,829 voters based on the census as well. These projections are only for within the town of Stratford and do not include growth that will occur in areas to the east and north of Stratford. So why this is important, Your Honor, and you asked this question a year ago and we didn't give you a suitable response, unfortunately. We have it here tonight. It shows you where the areas of growth are, so that if you divide that community in two, you can see where the growth is spread in two areas as opposed to having it all in one district. In order to ensure that the relative parity of voting by the time the third election after the mixed member proportional map has been set, and given the forecast of continued strong population growth within the town of Stratford, we recommend that the number of electors for districts that include Stratford be set below the average number of electors per district. We recommend 2 electoral districts of approximately 5,000 electors that would include Stratford residents plus residents to the east and the north. We have prepared a map, and for those watching, so basically the map would be, it's Stratford North and Stratford South. And Stratford North goes from Stratford right through to, I'll say the corner of the Big Blue Church in Stratford, all the way to Pisket, or to the bridge there by Pisket, and comes back down by China Point and Earnscliffe in those areas. We have prepared a map attached as Schedule B that shows 2 possible districts that would comprise Stratford in areas to the east and north. Stratford North and Stratford South districts would have approximately 5,000 electors, which would probably grow to 6,000 or more by the time the third provincial election has occurred. We appreciate the challenge that you have here tonight and during your exercise, but we feel that the growth in Stratford needs to be considered. The community of interest is a difficult one because of how far out it goes from Stratford, but we feel that if the 2 districts are split in half, Stratford is split in half into 2 districts, it will spread the growth into 2 districts so that you don't have one district that's proportionally greater than the other. We thank you for the opportunity to present our position with respect to the mixed member proportional representation map that you have been tasked to develop. We would be happy to answer any questions and provide any further information that you may require. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunphy. Any questions?
Your Honor, up here. Philip Brown. Richard's over there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm always calling him Richard.
Judge, the electoral boundaries map for the 27 districts, I believe, incorporates the city of Charlottetown with those seats encompassing the municipality. Is that correct?
6 districts, all within the
City of Charlottetown.
City of Charlottetown.
Which would be comparable to the Charlottetown district for the federal government for the federal election too, right?
Pretty much, I think. Yep.
Whereas the 2 maps that you have here, some of it extends north into let's say, York, correct?
Yeah,
And over into Milton.
some of it.
That's
Thank you.
in map number 1, and map number 2, correct me if I'm wrong, would be less to the east but more to the north.
I think, yeah, I think 2 is in, isn't
And the reason I ask that, because
it?
the
I
city
think,
of,
just to clarify, I think 2 is within the borders of Charlotte.
all of it,
I think so.
9, 8,
Now, yes, it goes out a bit, yeah. Yeah.
out to the east, right? Beyond Marshfield, or does Win there? Yeah.
In that area, yeah, that's right.
And as you know, Your Honor, that for years the city has made an argument many times over to try to keep those boundaries within federally and provincially. There is no way to do that. And again, you look at the variances are all 101 for the first map. Then if you go to the second map, 108, 109, above the average. I know it would require some creative cartography to make it happen, but it's been a long time trying to get to that point, and your map of last year, which is the 27 districts, finally got to that point, like the federal map, that you would try to make that happen if you're redrawn the 18 district map. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of support for that position. It seems to be, again, point out the difficulty when you start getting the districts bigger, they present some problems.
Summerside, when you go to Summerside, I'm sure that they will have something similar to what the city would be asking, but again, I think that a lot of time has passed and we finally reached it with the 27 districts and the Federal District of Charlottetown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce McIsaac. The concern I'm having with this map is that the bulk of the power that's going to be in this, if you go by populations, and I know that's important, is that in districts 4 to 11, there's going to be approximately 45,000 people that will be voting, and the rest of it is roughly, I think, at 55,000 according to the numbers. Is there a concern when you drew the map up about the cluster of power within that small district? In other words, the great divide, rural versus urban.
Well, there's no doubt that there's been a long period now of movement from both the east and the west towards the center. That's where the people have been gathering for one reason or another for a long period of time now, so that the populations in those areas have grown up, and the east and the west have unfortunately declined substantially. So it's a concern, all right, but in the end, it's the right to vote is a citizen's right, it's a people's right, and the votes, the power has to go where the people are. That's not to say that you ignore the extremes ends of the province or anything like that, but it does mean that there's going to be more seats in the middle, because that's where the population is. Yes,
Yeah, Chair and Commissioners, I'm here as Wade McLaughlin tonight, not as my day job, and in particular to make a comment about the two maps as they affect our area. Perhaps to pick up on the point that Bruce just made, and not to necessarily disagree, but 4 and 10 are both rural districts. And I happen to live in one of them on map 2 and then the other on map 1. And just to make a general point about the job that you folks have taken on and the challenge, it's difficult to achieve a community of interest with 18 districts. So in the case of map 1, I would be in District 4, which would extend from Brackley Beach to Lorne Valley. And I think the greater challenge, or the further challenge, that goes with that district is the Hillsborough River. Many of the communities of interest that have formed on each side of the river started either north or south of the river. A little bit different when you get to the head of the river and from Scotchford around to Pisgah. And it would, in the case of District 4, it would have 4 lobster fishing ports. It's a big rangy district, and I think rangy is the word. And looking at map 1, I would say that 1, 3, 4, and 17 are the 4 districts where it would be a major challenge for a rural MLA to not just cover the territory. Prince Edward Island, I cover a lot of it most days, but to bridge the communities and, in effect, serve the people. And one point I would add to this is, and I know I'm not concerned that you as a commission miss this, but I think in many times when we look at an exercise like this, it becomes kind of a combination of mathematics and geography. And then, we go to the ballot box and we count them up and figure out what happened and leave it till the next time. There is in serving, whether we've got 18 districts or 27, an important work that's done in building a team to serve the various candidates who will present themselves on a ballot, and that's work that goes from election to election, and we're just in the process of doing that now with the new boundaries that your commission drew very effectively, and I can say in our own case did a very successful job of putting together a community of interest from Brackley Beach to the Afton Road and north of the river. So that's a sort of a general comment about the kind of the ranginess of rural districts in general when you get down to 18, and in particular the ones I mentioned on map 1. To say then that I believe, interestingly, because District 16 has fewer electors on map 2, that map 2 does a better job of, on the whole, of grouping some of those rural areas. So I guess precisely, insofar as I'm here as a resident of West Cole Fed, I believe District 10 is a better setup for the people of West Cole Fed than District 4 would be on map 1. So that's, say, District 10 on map 2. I make a contiguous or further point, and it was one that was made by the North Shore community when you did this last year, and it was much appreciated in the area when they pointed out the community of interest and the long connections between the area of Stanhope Cove Fed and Grand Tracadie Pleasant Grove. Indeed, that relationship is quite likely to go to the stage of a full amalgamation with Grand Tracadie and Pleasant Grove joining the North Shore community in the not too far distant future. That work is underway. I'm not saying it's final, but the reason that work is currently underway is because those people are a community, and so looking at District 10 on map 2, there is the piece that takes you down as far as Bonshaw, Strathgartney, which I think most people would say has a longer history and a fit with the area, either in the direction of Kingston or in the direction to the west, than would be the case by the time you even get to Hunter River, let alone out to the north side. So if there were if you were looking to take map 2 and then to come back to this as a resident of West Gulf Head, it may work to bring Grand Tracadie and Pleasant Grove toward District 10, and then see what that produces in terms of further adjustments or accommodations. We certainly appreciate what you're up against, and realize that I guess when you say each district is 50% bigger, that's the easy part. It's all the knock-on effects. By the time you even get to the next district, you're talking about more than 50% by the time it all gets wrapped up. But thank you for the chance to speak to those particular points.
Thank you.
Darcy Lanche, Mermaid. I was listening. David and I often agree, but not on this. Having attended the meeting in Montague and just imagining how it's going to go in West Prince, I've been thinking about it over the day, and I think in contrast to what David would say, that in fact we should make the municipal areas larger. If we have a variance of 125%, why are we not making those districts in Charlottetown and Summerside and Stratford larger? Because they also have that added level of government that a lot of the rural districts do not have. In the municipalities, you have the full level of municipal government. So your MLA is not necessarily your first point of contact. Whereas if you're, out in the middle of the North Shore, or you're way up west, you don't have anybody but your MLA. So if we have a tolerance of 25%, I think we should use that 25% to move the districts out from the municipalities and let those municipal governments be that first stop the way they are. And that making those bigger would put, for example, in Stratford, would put Mermaid and Johnson's River and all those communities into Stratford, where we're sending our kids to school, where they're going to Stratford and then Stone Park and then Charlottetown Rural. To have communities like Mermaid and Johnson's River, just tacked on to the bottom of areas where all the other kids are going to different schools and going in different directions. I'm a 10-kilometer bicycle ride from Province House. My MLA should not be based in St. Peter's or, as it is now, in Morel. So that's my recommendation.
Hello, Rosemary Curley here from Stratford. I just want to offer some suggestions for improving the map. And the main thing is that the map looks hideous, especially in Prince County. And it's because of some of the missing parts. If you go to Hillsborough Bay, no St. Peter's Island or Governor's Island. If you go to Summerside Harbour, we see on the inset map, sample 1, District 15 includes Holman's Island, but that will never be, nobody will ever live there or vote there because it belongs to the Nature Conservancy of Canada. But the worst sin on this map is the omission of about 25 kilometres of sand dunes stretching from Cascampeck to Malpeck Harbour, including George Island, Bird Island, those are missing, Hog Island, the Conway Sandhills. And I think it's quite clear that there's nobody living on any of the islands, but I think any map of the province produced by the province should have all of the parts. And so we see in Malpeck Bay now on sample 1, you have Curtin Island and Little Curtin Island and Ram Island as belonging to District 13, whereas on the map, the next page, they're also in 13, but on the first page, they're interrupted. So I think you could just put them on and not color them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Here we go.
Florence Larkin. I'd just like to briefly revisit the missing 9 members or seats in this map. And if it is missing and you're not going to put them in, then technically it's not an MMP map. The districts, but it's not an MMP map because an MMP map will have 27 seats. Now, so I'm just putting that out there. The other thing is that you have a technician here, and I'm wondering if it's possible if he could do an overlay on one or both maps to scatter those 9 missing seats and just see what a map under MMP would look like. Wouldn't be a true representation, but it would give us a little better sense of what it would look like than it would on the current maps we have.
I'm sorry, I may not understand your question. With the other 9 seats, what are their definitions?
Well, the other 9 seats are provincial seats. Everybody in PEI will get to vote for the 9 seats. Yeah. And so they don't have one main district. In fact, they cover all of PEI. So in an actual election, they could be anywhere from the east point to the west point to the north point. So, but somehow, and we won't know that until there's an election, because it'll depend on where the seats will be designated in terms of bringing up proportional representation.
Yes, but we're, again, as I said to someone earlier, we're drawing an 18 district map.
Yes, but you're calling it an MMP map.
Pardon me?
You're calling it an MMP map, and this is not an MMP map.
I understand your point.
And I just think it would be interesting to help people understand what MMP might look like if we had an overlay showing those 9 seats. I mean, it mightn't be an exact representation, but it would give us a sense that those 9 seats are not missing, that there are going to be actual people in those 9 seats.
Well, I don't know what the technician could do to do that.
I don't know. He's a technician. Ask him.
I mean,
well, you said he could move boundaries around. I don't know. I'm just asking if it's possible. That's
yeah,
all.
but the problem is with the 9, there are no boundaries. You say it's the whole island.
That's right. So they'd have to go randomly in, but it would show us.
Well, you can divide the island into 9 sections, I suppose, and put 1 in each.
There'd be 27 numbers on that map.
Yes, I said that in my opening remarks. There will be 27.
Right, but we can represent visually it would look.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
You could even make note on these maps that if you go to the public consultations that there will be, you can make note on these maps, I'm Eric Anderson from Charlottetown, that there will be 9 more seats or however many more seats there'll be on the map. Yeah. It really, like you said, it really makes a...
But those 9 seats be regionally represented?
Just a minute now. We need mics.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah, just make a note on
you
these
want
maps
to make a note on the maps?
Yeah, just that there will be more seats. If you can't superimpose them into the map, as you're saying, it would be quite difficult because you don't know where they're going to be. But for future presentations or consultations, make a note on these sheets.
We could do that.
So, Your Honor, she's defining MMP, which means that those 9 seats elected by the parties, based on the number of, or the percentage of votes given to each of those parties, will come from different regions representing the whole island. Is that correct?
They're going to be elected by the people of Prince Edward Island.
Yeah, but are they going to be? But are they going to be representing Tignish? Is there going to be a rep up in Tignish, one down in Surrey? Is that how we're doing it? I don't think that's how we're doing it.
That would very much depend on where the people and the parties put their lists, people. It's going to be an open list, so.
Oh, yeah, but you can't define that Tignish will have a representative of these 9, East Baltic will have, because those 9 will come from all parts of the island, may not all be from 9 different places on Prince Edward Island. I think we're just
All right,
crystal balling.
No guarantees, but.
I think I'll have to end this conversation because it's not really what we're here about. We want to come back to the 18 district map. That's all we're drawing. That's all we have a mandate to do. That's all we're interested in doing, and we're finding that to be a hell of a job.
Any comments in the back of the room or this side?
Where do we meet?
Next meeting is next Thursday night at Athena School in Summerside. We have 3 more meetings. We have one next Thursday night at Athena School. And then on Monday, the 26th of February, we go to Morel. And then the 28th, we're at West Isle Composite High School. So that's a total of 5 meetings.
The question that I'm having, and I understand where you're coming from. This is 18 districts that you're looking for. But as in the general public, if you know the answer, great. If you don't, that's understandable. What is the next step? We heard about the 9 other seats and so on.
The next
is there
step,
some kind of light you might be able to shed onto that?
Yeah, the next step for us is to finish the public meetings, to finish our private discussions, and decide on the map, the commission itself. We will take the map and we will present it to the Speaker of the Legislature. What happens with that after that, that's up to other people and other bodies. But we hope to do that by sometime fairly early in March.
So who will have the final say?
Final say?
Who will ultimately have the final say on this decision? Bradley Collins.
Yeah, yes. Who will have the final say on the map?
Yes.
Well, I suppose it will be the legislature. The map will go, we'll deliver our map to the Speaker of the Legislature where it'll be tabled at the next sitting, which is probably in April. And
then, sorry, this will be the map if MMP does get does win the referendum.
All of this is our job was to prepare an 18 district map to be used as an educational tool in conjunction with the referendum. So they may decide at the end of the day they don't like the map, throw it away, even if depending on whichever way the thing goes.
Thank you.
There's no guarantee that this will ever be the map.
Hi, I'm Chris Ortenberger, and I'm in Bonshaw, and I have 3 quick questions. One, well, as a comment first, to thank you for your work, because I know this is not easy to try to carve up and figure out things like school districts and everything else, so I appreciate the work that's gone in. My first question is really locally specific. It's about that Strathgartney, Bonshaw, New Haven area that's really different, so it's District 10 between maps 1 and 2, and it seems to be one of the few areas that does have like a little peninsula kind of hanging down, and I just don't know, like, you know, was that just you're trying to get the numbers to work? I can't quite tell community-wise how it would affect that the contiguous areas in Map A versus Map B. Yeah, so it's the southern
10
part of, the yellow 10.
On sample 2, I think you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry.
I have to confess that some of that is trying to make the numbers work all right.
Great.
Yeah.
The second is, could you remind everybody what other avenues for feedback there are besides these 5 meetings?
Yes, we invite any written submissions that people would care to make.
And is there a deadline?
Well, we're hoping to be done with this by, early March.
So if people can't make it to the meetings or they think of something afterwards, they can email or send in
Yes.
something,
Yeah.
but kind of looking toward that first week in March.
We have a website, and
Right.
there's an address there, and you can submit it by email to the website.
And the last comment was just that I think too that you've definitely broken up the island into 18 districts, and if this is for educational purposes for MMP, it would be good to somehow graphically in the corner or something represent or mention that there are 9 seats. And I know you'd said that, and so I suspect you're hearing that in feedback. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The website is electoralboundaries.pe.ca. Any questions or comments? We have one over this side.
Thank you. My name is Gary Morgan. I'm from Fortune Cove. As you've heard on Monday night, that's not near Bay Fortune, that's up in the West Prince. I just had a few questions about the variance. I understood from some of the comments that it's an act of the legislature that makes the variance at 25%. Is that correct? Or is it a judicial decree?
No, okay, there's the Section 17.2 of the Electoral Boundaries Act, that's a provincial statute, says that in no case can a district be more or less than 25% of the provincial average. But then there's the charter that says the right to vote includes the right to effective representation. So, for example, if you needed to go beyond the 25% for effective representation, then the charter would say go beyond it. There was a case for Nova Scotia last year where the government's legislation was found to be violate Section 3 because the Boundaries Commission wasn't permitted to consider more than 25% as part of its work in arriving at what would constitute effective representation for some of the Acadian communities and the black community too in Preston.
Thank you. And did you mention that geography is a criterion under the charter?
Well, it's one of the factors that's normally taken into account, although it isn't a big factor in Prince Edward Island because we don't have any great physical barriers, no mountains or deserts or big forests or anything of that nature. So geographic things like that don't seem to be much of a factor in a small, densely populated province like Prince Edward Island.
Thank you. Mike, I appreciated the comment from the lady in front of me talking about consideration for a greater variance for the rural areas, and I would ask that that might be a consideration as you finish your deliberations.
Yeah. Well, in our last work, the 27, we took into account that rural districts are harder to serve for MLAs than urban ones, and as a consequence, In that instance, the urban districts were larger in terms of voters than the rural ones. So we did take that into account because that's a fact that was judicially noticed by the Chief Justice Mackinnon in the Supreme Court of Canada. And it applies, I think, even in Little Prince Edward Island. Distances are not great, but there's no doubt in my mind that it's much harder for an MLA to serve a rural district than it is for an urban MLA to serve an urban one where there are lots of other support around.
Sorry, I thought I was done. So my question then is, why was that not considered when you drew your map this time? That, as mentioned by the lady from Mermaid, our governance is strictly MLA representation. We don't have municipal governments.
In map 2, I think we did take it into account to a certain extent. It's a question of the extent. Map 1, I think, is basically a parity map, but map 2 shows some more variation between the rural ones and the urban ones. And the rural districts are somewhat smaller, I think, in map 2. But that was, that's something that we're still considering. But that's a recognized fact, not only by this commission, but I say by the Supreme Court of Canada itself. And we've never had any argument with that. Even when we went to our very first meeting, I think in the last commission, was in Summerside, and some of the Summerside people there told us, we're prepared to have a larger district. Let the rural ones be smaller. So, some people sometimes talk about rural and urban divide, but there's a lot of people in both of those communities that see the other's point of view as well.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yes, Richard.
I have to disagree with you that urban MLAs work less than rural MLAs.
I know you have to.
I'm serious about it. No, I'm serious because, some people represent a district. Housing is an important issue. Seniors are an important issue. The bulk of my district, there's a lot of issues, a lot of social issues, and you got to work really, really hard with them, and it takes a lot of time. So this argument that city MLAs don't work as hard as rural MLAs, I totally disagree with you because there's a different set of dynamics in an urban area, that people move to the city because of services, because of housing, and because of health care and things like that. And those issues are front in mind in those people's minds, and more so than sometimes than just a road being paved. Sometimes it's more important to help somebody on an addiction issue. No, just a minute, Judge, just a minute.
Okay.
With an addiction issue that's having a family crisis than considering whether to pave a road or not. So that argument that we don't work hard, I totally disagree with. Thank you.
Well, Richard, nobody made that argument in the first place, but secondly, if I awkwardly expressed myself, the point I was trying to make to Mr. Morgan was simply that in the urban areas, there's more support than the rural MLAs. You have a whole city council, for example, that people can go to. You're not the only game in town, in other words. Whereas the rural MLA, he often is.
But for social issues, I am.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know you work hard, Richard. I know you work hard.
Put that on the map.
Okay. Put it on the map. Okay.
Carl, brother, can you explain to us what's going to be the ultimate presentation to your at the end of your report? Is it going to be one of these maps, or a single map, or a conglomeration? What's going to ultimately be presented to the voters of Prince Edward Island in the referendum?
These maps were just to stimulate conversations like we were having here tonight. The commission hasn't decided on either of those maps. But at the end of the day, after all of the public meetings are over and after all our meetings are over, we will present the Speaker of the House of Assembly with a map of 18 districts. And we hope to have that happen sometime fairly early in March. And we hope that to be a fair and reasonable presentation of what an 18-district map would look like so that it can be used for reference purposes during the referendum to be held in conjunction with the next provincial general election. Yes, sir.
My name is Eric again from Charlottetown. I look around the room and I don't see many youth or students here. Is there anything you guys have been trying to do or looking into to try and stimulate some interest? Universities, high schools? Thank you.
No, other than these public meetings, that's all.
Any further questions or comments? Guess that's it.
Well, thank you all for coming. It was a pleasure, and we got some good ideas, and we look forward to the next public meeting. So good night.